So, welcome to Sharks and Us. Good evening. Thank you for coming along. Tonight, we're going to talk about some of the incredible sharks around the UK coastline and take a look at how the relationship between sharks and humans formed over time. Now, you might be a bit of a shark genius already, or you might be totally terrified of sharks, or have absolutely no interest in them whatsoever, and you were just like, hey, it's a Wednesday night. I need to do something different. I'm going to join a Shark Talk. Whatever the reason being, we are very, very happy to have you here. So thank you for coming along. And I hope that by the end of this little bite-sized talk, excuse the pun, you'll have learned something new to share with friends and family. So hopefully there'll be something here super interesting for all of you. First of all, I suppose I best introduce myself. I'm Aaron and I work for the Wildlife Trusts, and I've always been really, really interested in animals. I've loved them since I was a child. The weird and wonderful creatures of the sea are particularly some of my favourites. And I always wondered, hey, how can I get this into a career? How can I do something where I get to work with and, hear about these sort of brilliant animals day to day? So I went and studied a master's degree in applied anthrozoology at Nottingham Trent University, where I learned about the complex relationships between animals and humans in the wild. Humans and animals in the wild, wild humans. Um, that has really, really kind of been the key interest in how I got into sharks, because I was really fascinated about when I used to go surfing with the Nottingham Trent surfing group, and I'd swim out into the sea, and I'd get, that little bit where you're looking down, you're seeing the crystal clear waters, you can see the sandy bottom beneath you, and you're like, hey, this is great, I'm having a great time. And then suddenly you get to that bit where the water below you is suddenly just a deep, dark blue. And even me, who thought I was very confident with animals, I was in my element, I start to get a little flicker of fear. There's something in me that sort of goes, hang on a minute, this isn't right. Maybe I shouldn't be here. And that got me really interested in why. Why did I feel that way? So that's going to be a little bit about what we're going to look into and investigate today. But, despite spending about 10 years and looking into sharks, researching them, Googling them at any given moment I can, my knowledge barely scratches the surface. We know animals across the world, there's so much to know, there's such an abundance of amazing, wonderful nature. So I'm going to do my very best today to share some of the facts that I know with you and some of the things that I find most exciting about sharks. But I'd like to learn from you as well, okay? It's a two-way thing. So if you've got some cool shark facts and you'd like to share them in the chat, tell us your favorite shark if you've got one, doesn't matter if you don't, then please do, feel free. This is a great opportunity for us to share and learn from one another as well. So let's get started, shall we? Hopefully you can see this. I thought I'd start with the word shark. That's a good place to start, right? So this is likely a word derived from the word shirk. Apologies for pronunciation. I haven't practiced my Dutch in the run up to this, which means villain or scoundrel. Or from the Mayan word, shook. Again, haven't practiced my Mayan, which was the word used to describe sharks and other sea monsters. So villain, scoundrel, monsters. We've given them a bit of a fearsome reputation, haven't we? Of course, we need to have a healthy respect for the powerful predators in the wild, but sadly, instead of a sensible wariness of sharks, we've actually turned this to an irrational fear. This terror has kind of led to the vilification and the persecution of sharks worldwide. And I'm sure you can guess which species out of humans and sharks have suffered the most as a result of our uneasy relationship. There are over 530 species of sharks. They're essential to ocean's health, but there's one species that's the most famous and the most feared. Can you guess? It's the great white shark. So this is the world's largest known predatory fish, growing up to a maximum of around 20 feet long and weighing up to around 7,000 pounds. So that's over 3 tons. That's quite a lot more than a rhinoceros. So imagine a rhinoceros in the ocean swimming at you. It's kind of understandable. Their size is so substantial. They're shaped like a torpedo and can speed through the water at speeds of up to 35 miles per hour. So a rhino traveling at you at the speed of a car. Yeah, not ideal, eh? So usually though, they're cruising along at a lot slower speed of around 5 miles per hour. Great whites thrive in temperate waters. So temperate means cooler, mild temperatures. So just temperate in the middle somewhere, not too hot, not too cold. And partly they're able to do this because they've got a really complicated circulatory system. So the blood of most fish and the body temperature of most fish is completely dependent on the temperature of surrounding water. Okay, so that's what we call an ectotherm, or some people call that cold-blooded. But it doesn't mean their blood's cold, it just means that they regulate it based on their environment. But great whites, just like us, can regulate their own body temperature, which is really cool for a fish, quite rare as well. So that enables them then to have a body temperature that's slightly higher than the water around them, which means that they can hunt and still have energy to hunt in those waters that might be a bit too cold for other predatory sharks that you find in the tropics. So while there are often stories of great white sharks in UK waters, there's never been a reliable recording of a white shark in UK seas, but we do have some incredible species, and in my opinion, even better ones here around the UK. So we're going to talk about those a little bit later on, so hang on for those. So then, why are sharks like the great white and so many other species so feared? To really understand the complex relationship we have with sharks, we need to dive into history. Again, another pun, sorry, I didn't actually plan that out. We need to dive into ancient history, in fact. This is an odd one, I'll give you that. But unfortunately, most of the stories and artwork about sharks from history aren't like this illustration from 1909. I don't know how much salt water the artist had drunk at this point before doing this one. I don't know what they'd thought they'd seen. But this depicts a very friendly, lovely shark having a jar of something. But in reality, actually, many of the pieces of artwork and the stories from history actually call sharks sea monsters. Okay, these stories of sea monsters are things that have captured the imagination of cultures across the world and across time. So, can you imagine what it would have been like, though, coming across a shark for the very first time if you'd never ever seen a picture? You know, we can just Google it now, go, what does a great white shark look like? Oh, there it is. That's lovely, lovely angles of a great white. But if you'd never seen one before and then you start to explore seas, been one of those early explorers, what might you have thought coming face to face with a great white shark? And of course, we need to remember that the seas would have been much more full of life back then, sadly, and hopefully have come across this wonderful wild ocean, and rightly so, maybe been a little bit intimidated by sharks. So, a little story time. One of the first ever written accounts of a shark encounter was by this guy. He looked a little bit more animated in real life, by Greek historian Herodotus. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Herodotus? Whatever sounds cooler. Herodotus, let's go for that. So it's 492 BC, and a military commander called Mardonius led a Persian expedition with one aim: to conquer Greece. The invasion had been going well. Mardonius was having some great luck, some really good successes, and was hoping to go home to be able to get all the glory. But then one day his luck ran out. A fierce storm came in and hit the Persian fleet near a peninsula in the northern Aegean Sea, near Mount Athos, I believe it was. And the storm caused huge damage, and some 300 ships were wrecked. Now, the tale by Herodotus, who was retelling this story, stated that many of the 20,000 sailors that went into the water on those days were eaten by sharks or sea monsters. It was actually quoted from the story that sharks came to seize and devour the sailors. This is kind of the first infamous appearance of sharks in literature. So you can imagine sitting at home in Greece, and then Herodotus comes back with a story about 20,000 sailors, likely an exaggerated number, being devoured by great sea beasts. What's that going to make you feel? I think I'll stay clear of the ocean, thank you very much. And we still now tell stories about sea beasts. We're still fascinated by them. So I did initially at this stage have the wonderful music of Jaws playing in the background. That really famous, I won't, it's not really one to sing, but that real famous two-note dun. We were going to listen to that just because I would have challenged any of you to sit there in quiet, listening to that wonderful soundtrack of that film and not feel a little bit tense. I was going to maybe make you feel like I might jump out at you with a crazy shark picture or something like that. But the idea being, though, that there's no one that can watch that film and maybe feel super comfortable. So, "You will never go in the water again" was one of the catchlines of the 1975 film Jaws. The whole premise was to entertain people through fear, just like many of the great thriller and horror films we have nowadays. But the film had a significant impact on the public's perception of sharks, and much of it was negative. So the film depicted a great white shark as a ferocious and mindless man-eater, and this portrayal has persisted in popular culture today. So the film's depiction of a shark that attacks people for no apparent reason has led people to mostly fear them and feel that all sharks are dangerous to humans. That ominous theme song makes you feel tense and uneasy, and I actually heard that the reason why is because we are used to music, there being more music. So when there's just the two notes, just the dun, and then a long ominous silence with the of the sea around, we naturally instinctively are like, where's the rest? something's got to happen. And that slight anxiety that builds up in you going, oh, come on, something's about to happen. When's the next note going to come in? That punctuated by the shark appearing has made a bit of a combination in our minds of feeling a little bit of anxiety around the shark species. Now, we want to be thrilled by a film, of course, and nobody can deny that Jaws is a really well-made piece of entertainment, but sadly, people have struggled to separate that vision of the mindless man-eater shark in Jaws with the reality of what sharks actually are. They just can't shake off that negative stereotype ever since, and I'm sure there'll be people in this chat, in this talk this evening who feel the same way. As I said, I don't necessarily like swimming out to the bit where you can't see below you, and I wonder why that could be. But it's not just movies and entertainment that sharks have influenced. Sharks symbolize power, predatory prowess, speed, and ferocity, and you can see how human culture has adopted the shark as a symbol of these things just by taking a look at some of the logos for sports teams, clothing, and brands. Just take a look at some of these. It's all the sharp angles, the jagged teeth. You know, you can spot the jagged teeth in every single one of these logos, can't you? So you can quite clearly see what kind of image we want to put out there of sharks. So our relationship with sharks is built on the foundation of fear and a belief that they're mindless killing machines. But we sort of admire them in the way for their power and their hunting skills. But ultimately, we fear sharks because we know we wouldn't stand a chance in the water with them. Okay? But do we really actually need to be so afraid? We'll talk about that a bit more in just a moment. But let's first of all take a little look at what makes them such fantastic hunters and just brilliantly interesting animals. First off, their sense of smell. So sharks have an incredible sense of smell, among the best in the animal kingdom. They use their sense of smell as the primary method to catch and track their prey. They can actually detect, I don't know if this means much to anyone, but I've got a bit of an example of why. 1 part per 25 million or 1 part per 10 billion, depending on the chemical and the species of shark. But really what that kind of means is that some species of shark would be able to detect 1 droplet of blood in a swimming pool, something I'm sure you've heard before. They use an organ called the olfactory bulb, which is located in their noses. You can't actually see it there, but it's obviously, but it's in the nose, and that's how they detect blood in the ocean. And this enables them to get to injured and wounded creatures that they might stand an easier chance of catching. But it's not just smell they use to detect potential prey. Sharks have amazing electrosensory systems as well. So they've got these special cells which are called electroreceptors, and they're mostly concentrated in their heads. These receptors help them to detect electrical fields generated by living organisms. So we all generate electricity going about, moving about, and sharks can detect them in animals, and that can help them hunt even in the dark. And as well as their senses, there's their body shape. Check this guy out. Streamlined, torpedo-like, with flexible fins and a powerful tail to help them move quickly towards fast prey. Any idea what that is? Off the back, I don't know if any of you know. If any of you know, pop it in the chat. I'll be properly impressed. But what this is shark skin under a microscope. This is the skin of a shark. It looks like some crazy armor. Amazingly, shark skin is covered by layers of these tooth-like structures called denticles. So these shapes vary in size and structure across the body. Different shark species have different denticle structures depending on kind of their lifestyle and environment. So these little structures all overlap with each other, you know, a little bit like the tiles on a rooftop. And what that means is, and I wouldn't advise this, but if you stroke a shark one way, it might feel nice and soft, and you brush it the other way, and it might feel a little bit rough, okay? So yeah, again, don't go doing that, but that just gives you a bit of an idea of the feeling. So not only does this amazing structure help the shark glide through the water and cut through the water with minimal drag, meaning it'll use up less energy, help them move quicker, but it also helps prevent a buildup of small marine organisms, those little parasites on the skin. So it actually does act like a bit of an armour, which is brilliant. And then there's the teeth. So this shark, this is a sand tiger shark, just as a bit of an illustration there. Lovely rack of teeth on that chap there. Sharks can replace their teeth. Again, this is a fact that lots of people do tend to find out quite early on if you start looking into sharks and shark biology. Their teeth continuously grow and replace through their lives. So you might see on this sand tiger shark here, you might see multiple rows of teeth in a shark's mouth. And that's because they're constantly able to move those back ones forward to replace any that get damaged, any that they lose after biting a particularly frisky piece of prey. You can usually tell the shape of a shark tooth to get a bit of an idea of what sort of prey it tends to go for as well. So if we've got a thinner, long, pointy tooth, then typically this is for hunting fish, okay? Speedy moving fish, slippery fish. If we can puncture into one of those and keep a hold of it, then we're much more likely to be able to have a successful hunt. And then if they have that wider, serrated, sort of triangle-shaped tooth, these are for larger prey. So this example there, that's a great white shark tooth on the right, and that is the sand tiger shark tooth on the left. And that triangle tooth is for serrated, serrating teeth are there for eating those larger prey, tearing off chunks that then sharks can swallow whole. They don't chew like we do. Okay. Now, shark attacks are still a relatively rare occurrence. They always have been rare comparatively, but obviously we have fewer and fewer sharks in the seas now. But we would be easy prey for a shark. So it makes you wonder, with how many people go in the sea each year, just think about it. We're quite a slow moving, even if you are a particularly talented swimmer. We're slower than a great white, right? If one of you can swim at over 35 miles an hour, let me know. But we're slow moving and relatively easy to catch. So why are sharks so very rare? Firstly, there's no real evidence of sharks actively hunting humans. Let's just put that out there as well. Okay, active hunting means hunting to try and find you and eat you. Okay, there's no actual evidence to suggest that sharks do that. They don't want to eat us. Okay, so that's the good news. Let's start with that. Excellent. But even for the very unfortunate few who are killed by sharks each year, and we'll talk about that in a moment, it's incredibly rare for the shark to eat them. Often they get injured, okay, from a little test bite, and then they are able to hopefully swim away and often die of their wounds and of blood loss. So scientists actually believe that the vast majority of attacks are because the shark is confused, afraid, or simply curious. If any of you have got a puppy at home or have had a puppy in the past, how do puppies like to test things out? What do? They nip, okay? They nip and bite. It's quite cute. Well, only cute-ish. My dog wasn't overly adorable when she was nipping at me, but that little nip. If you're a massive 3-ton great white shark and you're sort of going over to have a little chomp, go, is that food? Do I want that? That's going to do quite a lot of damage. That's going to give you a pretty bad day. Okay, so that is essentially what they're doing. They don't have opposable thumbs, so the only way they can test if something's food very often, and if they're curious or a bit afraid or they want to find out what something is, they could go up and give it a nip. Now, surfers seem to be one of the most often people in the news that may encounter a shark attack, and for a long time it was believed that sharks mistook surfers for seals. So it's pretty easy to see why, okay? You can see that confusion coming about as a surfer on a board may look a little bit like the silhouette of a seal, but we've just talked about how sophisticated and advanced shark sensors are. So actually that it's not a myth. It's still something that scientists consider, but it's becoming sort of less commonly thought of as a reason why sharks may attack, because they believe that sharks do have good enough eyesight. Also, how do great white sharks hunt? So great white sharks are ambush hunters. They swim real deep underneath their prey, camouflaged by that darker top, that darker backside. So when animals looking down, they can just see a darker shape. It's harder for them to be able to be spotted. And actually, they launch themselves up and out of the water in a spectacular fashion sometimes, with an amazing breach, surprising their prey, accelerating into them with great force. This is also why I tell people the idea of punching a shark in the nose to stop, if it's got hold of you. This is a shark that can swim with its face into a very heavy seal that probably weighs more than you. So if you can punch with the force of a giant seal underwater, fair play to you, give it a go. But in reality, that's not necessarily going to do the job. So if this is how they hunt, how many times is it this sort of case how they hit a surfer? Incredibly rare. The reports of attacks on surfers are actually the sharks seems to just swim up. It just seems to appear out of nowhere, swim up to them, have a little chomp, let go, and swim away. So that's a curiosity thing. That is a testing thing. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be stood there reassuring you, going, "Oh, don't worry, he's just being curious." If you'd there just been bitten by a shark, I know that still sucks. But what this is important to do is understand that we aren't being actively hunted by sharks in the sea. Just that knowledge alone, the knowledge that this, accidental, unfortunate encounters are incredibly rare, and the sharks are not trying to hunt us, is a good thing. Hopefully that gives you a bit of reassurance if you weren't sure. So, statistics on shark attack numbers in 2024 vary quite a lot depending on the sources. So, some people, what determines an unprovoked attack can vary in some records. But in an update to the International Shark Attack File, it was stated that there were 47 unprovoked attacks in the world last year. Only 7 of those were fatalities. That's 7 people in 2024, and just think how many people swim in the sea every day. And these random assortment of things are all things that kill more people a year than sharks. Okay, vending machines as well. That's the really famous one. That's the one that people often quote. More people are killed a year by vending machines than by sharks. By fireworks, by ladders. This is one that champagne corks. Yeah, 20 people apparently a year on average die by champagne corks. Now, of course, we are not here laughing about death, all of these tragic incidents, but the reason that we bring these up and the reason that we want to share these is just to explain a bit of a comparison. Okay, if you ask people what they're afraid of, I wonder how many people in the street would say sharks. I wonder how many people would say champagne corks. So just as a bit of perspective there, we can kind of see that that fear of sharks is irrational. Now, that doesn't mean we need to jump into the sea and play happy days with sharks and frolic around with them thinking we're totally safe. They are wild animals after all, and they need their respect and their space, but we do have to think about it rationally to enable us to enjoy a responsible dip in the deep blue and to make sure that we give the sharks that respect and care they deserve as creatures sharing the planet with us. So, can we actually live peacefully alongside sharks? Of course we can. The very first step is education. We now know that sharks have been portrayed as mindful killers, and those ancient stories of sea monsters still resonate today. And that backdrop of Durden, Durden, still seems to echo in people's minds as they go for a dip in the sea. It can be hard not to instinctively fear these animals, but by being here today, by coming along and being curious about these animals, you've taken that first step in hopefully making the world a better place for sharks. We all need to start to share these facts, make sure that people understand more about sharks so that we fear them less and therefore persecute them less. So I guess it's time now to get to know some of our neighbours. So let's have a little look at some of my favourites, some of the special few that we have in UK waters. You might know about these already, but if you don't, hopefully we'll be able to surprise you with some of the amazing creatures we have around these coastlines. First up, it's the poor beagle shark. It's a particular favourite name of mine. So you can see how somebody might see one of these guys and think it was a great white. And in fact, they are a relative of the great white. They are a mackerel shark. But in fact, some of these sightings of great whites that have been reported around the UK, people actually think they could be poor beagle sharks. They are pretty big. They're about half the size of a great white, though, with nearly some of the bigger ones going up to about 12 feet, so 3.7 meters. They can weigh over 200 kilograms. That is still a big fish, isn't it? If you saw that in the sea, you'd be very, very forgiven for thinking, whoa, massive shark off the UK coast, must be a great white. But actually, as I mentioned before, there's been no evidence yet of those in UK waters. It's thought that the name poor beagle comes from the fact that their bodies are streamlined like a porpoise, and also they have the hunting skill and the tenacity and the sort of relentless hunting abilities of a beagle dog. Don't know if that's the exact reason. That's I don't know if that's completely true, but that is rumor, and I think that's quite a fun fact anyway. I did try and put into AI cross a porpoise with a beagle dog, and thinking it might come out with some incredible monstrosity that I could have shared with you, but even AI got a little bit confused by that, so nothing to share with you there. Next up, we have the gorgeous blue shark. Now, this is an open ocean species that visits the UK seas in summer months. They feed mainly on small fish and squid, though they've been known to take seabirds and other small sharks as well. The largest blue shark ever caught in the UK seas weighed a whopping 116 kilograms and measured over 9 feet long, so that's pretty impressive. These guys are listed as near threatened, so they are, they're getting there. They are under threat. They make up about 60% though of all reported shark catches, and they dominate the fin trade and the shark meat trade. So, despite being considered one of the most abundant and resilient shark species, their populations are thought to be decreasing. And that decrease is definitely linked to the fin and growing shark meat trade. So we do need to look after these guys. Okay. Next up, now this is a fan favorite. I know lots of people that this is a total favorite in UK waters, but the biggest fish we have around the British Isles, in fact, the second largest fish species on planet Earth after the whale shark, is the basking shark, an absolute titan. So these actually, though, no need to be afraid of them. You're not going to fall into their mouths. They feed only on a diet of plankton. So their mouths can be up to about a meter wide, and they're lined by things called gill rakers. You can kind of see them in some of these pictures here. So these gill rakers are kind of a specialized organ that filter out and strain out plankton from the water. So they suck in all that water, the food gets taken in, but the water passes out. Okay, so it's quite similar to sort of a baleen whale, like a blue whale with those big baleen plates that look like little little tiny long teeth that sift out for krill. They're very, very similar to that. So despite their huge size, basking sharks have comparatively small, just around 10 centimeter long brains. Okay, and if this is a massive animal, that is quite a small brain. But why would they need a big brain? They don't have to be particularly strategic with hunting. Their way of getting food is just to swim forward with their mouth open. I'm very jealous. I wish that could be the case for myself. You don't need a super sophisticated hunting behavior. You don't necessarily need to evolve a really big problem-solving brain. Now, basking sharks are classified as endangered. They're impacted by bycatch, entanglement, ship strikes, changing climate, and marine debris. And historically as well, they were actually hunted in Scotland as recent as 1994, targeted for their really oily livers, which could be used for fuel to light oil lamps. Okay. Thankfully, they're now a protected species, though, but we still need to continue to look after these wonderful animals. Here we go. This one's a cool one, the thresher shark. So growing up to 6 meters long with an amazing tail making up around half of their actual body length. So, their tail is the same length as their body again. They actually use this wonderful tail to hunt. So they'll herd fish into tight shoals and then thrash at them with their whip-like tail, stunning some of the fish and making them easier to catch. They prefer open sea, deeper waters are better for hunting for them. And they're one of the few shark species that actually like to breach. So again, as I mentioned with the great white, that picture there, that looks probably higher than, I don't know, that looks spectacular, but that's pretty high up. But they shoot themselves up out of the water, and this behavior is likely a method for removing parasites from their skin. So as they smack back down again into the water surface, it can help to dislodge and remove those parasites. Next one. Now, this is my favorite. I don't know if anyone wants to guess my favorite UK shark. I don't know if any of you have put your favorite shark in. I'll check the chat at the end. But my absolute favorite is the Greenland shark. Look at that face. How could you not love that guy, hey? So the Greenland shark is known for being the world's longest lived vertebrate. Vertebrate being, animal with a the spine, the vertebrae. Thought to potentially be able to live up to staggering ages. I don't know if anyone over 500 years old, it's thought. So can you imagine there could be a Greenland shark swimming around UK waters right now that was alive when King Henry VIII was on the throne? Incredible. So they live in really cold waters, so those deep waters around sort of northern England and Scotland. They can grow to a length of about 7 meters and can weigh over a ton, but most are quite a lot smaller than that. And they are helped to reach that extraordinary age because they drift along at speeds of about 2 miles per hour. Okay, so don't worry, all those longevity experts telling you eat only chickpeas for 20 years or bath in your own urine. No, just take it at Greenland shark pace. Just drop right down, take things nice and slow every once in a while, and hey, look how long these guys managed to cling on, eh? So in the early 1900s, as many as 30,000 Greenland sharks were caught every year. Thankfully, those numbers have now dropped, but still are many are caught by accident as well. So again, we need to make sure that we're protecting this wonderful species. An absolute personal favorite of mine, and I think this will probably be the one that most of you will remember after today if you didn't already know about Greenland sharks. So everybody, that is just a very brief introduction to just a handful of some of the amazing species that we have around the UK. Just a little bite-sized snippet at some of the ones that I find the most fascinating, and hopefully some real fun facts to kind of get you interested. And if you learn something new, then fantastic. We actually have over 40 species of sharks in UK waters. 21 of those species, I think 21, living in our seas all year round, and the rest being sort of seasonal visitors and things like that, and occasional visitors. So it is the Wildlife Trust National Marine Week on the 26th of July to the 10th of August. And I know those of you who are quick maths in the chat there may have worked out that's in fact 2 weeks. Bonus week. So keep an eye for updates. You can check out Marine Week and how you can get involved on the Wildlife Trust Marine Week page. You can find various Marine Week events that you can sign up for example, the whale and dolphin watching weekend to a rock pool ramble. There's loads to get involved with, so I'd encourage you to do just that. Check that out if this is something that you're interested in and marine species are something you're passionate about. And also, lastly, happy 30 Days Wild. So 30 Days Wild is the Wildlife Trust initiative over June, where people can get involved in something every single day for connecting to nature. This tiny little talk, this little taster of sharks, is just one of the things that you can get involved with over June. There are daily posts for you to check out and more events coming up. So also take a look at 30 Days Wild, and if you're not already involved, I'd definitely recommend it. I join in as well, and it's fantastic. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So thank you all so much for coming along. I wanted to keep this relatively short because it's beautiful weather outside. It's a gorgeous day. I know we don't necessarily want to sit and look at dark pictures of the sea for an hour long. So just a quick one for us this evening to share some cool facts with you. I saw a brilliant comment there. Trump wanting to rename the Greenland. That just popped up as I've stopped sharing. Excellent comment. I'm really happy that you guys came along. Thank you so much to near 50 of you making the time to come along on a Wednesday night and learn about sharks. And as I said earlier, this is the first step to helping them become more protected and rightfully so have hopefully a safer, more peaceful existence on this planet Earth. I'm sure some of you, many of you, may have watched Ocean by David Attenborough. We know some of the challenges that sharks face in our ocean. I purposely didn't want to bring some of those up this evening. I wanted to have a really nice, cheerful look at some of the wonderful species. But please do go and look up some more. Pick one of those species and go and investigate it a little bit further. Find out something new. If you already think you know everything there is to know about sharks, then hey, it's your responsibility to go and share that with other people. Make sure they're aware of how wonderful these species are, how rare those attacks are. Should we really be this scared of sharks? I don't think so. So thank you all very much for coming. I hope next time you swim in the sea you feel a little bit more comfortable. And thank you very much for joining us. Take care and have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.